Hi, this is Ken Adams, and welcome to this edition of the Valley View. And I'm joined this week by Alicia Kuhn and Malia Witham. And we're going to talk about a special event that's coming up, and it's kind of to let people know about foster care. So, Alicia, why don't you explain a little bit about what's going on, where it is, and so on?
Sure. So Wednesday, April 29th at 6:30 at Kaiser Civic Center, we're holding a free event that's open to the community, and our intention is to be able to share a little bit about the process of becoming a foster parent and truly to answer people's questions, give them as much information as possible. And we'll have one of our foster parents, Malia, will be there, and we'll be joined by a couple of other foster parents. So it'll bring some nice perspective to the event, and people will be able to hear firsthand from current foster parents about their experience.
But this is kind of a special needs kind of time, and that we need some more help in this area. We did a show last year, but now it's a little bit more critical that we get some more foster parents. So maybe you could give us some background on that.
Sure. So, yeah, I would absolutely say this is a critical time right now. We're really feeling the stress of trying to find homes for children when they enter foster care, when we don't have a large pool of foster parents to look at in terms of matching children with homes. And the stress is so significant right now that children are having to be separated from their siblings in order to locate homes that are able to receive them. And we're having to contact other counties sometimes to locate a foster home for a child or for siblings. And really the reality is that while we're scrambling, and maybe scrambling is not the right word, but that stress makes us feel that way sometimes.
It feels like you're scrambling.
It feels like we're scrambling. When we'll have the children in the DHS office with us, trying to entertain them, trying to reassure them and comfort them, while it may take us hours and hours or all day long to find a foster home that is able to take them in. So due to that significant stress, we're really trying to pound the pavement and get the word out. And this event next Wednesday is really a call to our community
to get more foster parents. Now, I would imagine that you do try to keep siblings together, but that's not always for foster parents. Maybe they only have room for one, and it's kind of hard to take two or maybe even more than that.
When a foster parent becomes certified through DHS's home study process, we determine that they meet the certification standards as outlined for the state of Oregon, and that includes a capacity. We don't want to have a dozen children in a foster home. Children's needs are important, and often the emotional or behavioral needs of a child require some significant attention from a parent. So we don't want to place too many children in one home. So a two-parent foster parent household would have a maximum of a total of 7 children in their home, unless there is some sort of program exception, and that would be on a case-by-case basis. And we do have some single foster parents, and the certification standard for single foster parents is that they have a maximum of 4 children in the home. So that total takes into consideration biological or adoptive children that may already be in the home. So when we have, say, a sibling group of 2 or 3 children who have just been removed from their home, removed from their school, removed from what they know as their community and their connections, it's so critical to us to try to, at the very least, maintain those sibling connections. Oftentimes, the oldest sibling has been parentified, meaning that they've felt responsible for the care of their younger siblings. So it can be really traumatic for those.
For both the older one and the younger
Absolutely.
ones, because the younger ones are counting on
Absolutely.
him or her to help guide them, since
Exactly.
they haven't had that probably from the parents.
So if we're looking at a foster home that we think these foster parents really would be a great match for these children, that their particular strengths and skills would be really well suited for these children's needs. The reality is that they may already have 3 or 4 children placed with them, so we cannot then place 2 or 3 or 4 more children in that home on top of that. And that really articulates where the problem is currently, is that when we're looking at our list of available homes, it may say there's 1 opening in this home, or there's availability for 2 children in this home, but we may be sitting with 3 or 4 children in the office on any given day.
And well, I don't know. It's just that I remember when my kids were young, sometimes the neighborhood kids would all show up in the house, and there'd be like 6 or 7 of them in there. And the thoughts of having 6 or 7 kids in the house, it can be pretty chaotic. But at least they were only usually there for an hour or 2 till they went over to somebody else's house. But it does present some problems. I mean, that's a lot of kids to be taken care of. So you can't have maybe just one parent working. And even that is, with 7 kids, I think you almost need 2 parents around almost all the time.
Right, and it's something that we try to assess through our home study process, and then also through our ongoing contact with the foster families, is to determine how are they doing, and what kinds of supports maybe are they needing, and are they doing well, or is this too much for them? And sometimes people obviously their hearts are in this, and they want to say yes, and they don't want to think about children having to be split up. But realistically, sometimes they truly cannot care for that many children. So again, it's a balance. At the end of the day, we need to have a safe home for a child to be placed in, and it needs to be a certified foster home. But we also don't want to overload our foster families.
I would also imagine that then maybe people that have retired recently might be good candidates for something like this, because I would think most of their kids are grown, if they have any, and they have more time available. Is that what you find, that sometimes recently retired people can do that sort of work?
Empty nesters or retired people are absolutely a population that we try to target. And I think that maybe there's a little bit of a misconception. People sometimes think that, they're beyond parenting age, or they're getting older, and, I've had questions about whether DHS would think that they are still able to raise children. And it really is a case-by-case basis of a certifier assessing the strengths of a foster parent, and maybe areas that, for example, if a potential foster parent has a particular health condition, it isn't that health condition necessarily that would disqualify them from being a foster parent, but really it's our job to take a look at how would that impact their ability to parent, and maybe it doesn't make sense for them to parent toddlers, right. But that they could certainly serve children age 12 and up very well.
Right, because, and not only that, but just judging from my own experience, it's a lot more relaxing after you're retired, so you can be a lot more patient with kids and like that. And I would think that would be something that maybe people should think about if they're around retirement age, that maybe they could, and you don't have to do it on a permanent. There's all different levels. It might just be a short-term emergency kind of situation where you need somebody to take them for that night, maybe for another night or 2 after that. And some is more long-term. Is that how this works?
Right, and our foster parents can specify if they only want to be available for emergency shelter care placements, and that would be sometimes in the middle of the night. Other times we have, if a Child Protective Services worker has removed children from the home, and has not been able to identify a relative right away who could be certified that very day on an emergency basis, sometimes we just need a short-term foster home to help get us through that period of time until maybe we can further assess relatives and determine, sometimes it takes a little while for that information to come forward. And if we're able to certify maybe an aunt or an uncle that next week, then that short-term foster care placement has helped us to bridge that gap.
And now are there also foster parents that you're looking at for more long-term kind of placement as well?
In general, a placement of a child would be a number of months on average. We typically work with families for approximately a year, and we're guided by the Adoption and Safe Families Act. So that's where that 12-month mark, we are taking a look at whether children can be returned home to their parents. There's a court hearing that happens at that time. So sometimes children can go home sooner than that. Sometimes it's longer than 12 months. If maybe parents are close but not quite there yet and the court's granting them a little more time. So I would say in general a foster care placement is a number of months.
And Malia, you're a foster parent. So what has been your experience with being a foster parent? And what kind of kids have you fostered?
We do, our age is 3 and under. So I have 3 kids who are 13, 11, and 10. And so we take foster care 3 and under just to fit with our family right now. But we have had actually some long-term, on average ours are a longer term. And I always tell people it's the hardest and most beautiful thing we've ever done. And we fall in love with these kids and we root for their parents, and we've had a few who have gone to adoption and then been adopted, and that's actually been really beautiful to see. And we've had a return to parent too, which is also beautiful to see redemption in their lives, the redemption of family. And that's what we pray for from the beginning, that whether it's, we start out always to return to parent, but if that doesn't work out, we're just overjoyed when they get a forever family and when they have that safe home forever. And that's why we do it.
Now, how are your kids with getting foster kids?
They actually love it. Actually, we just said goodbye to 2 children, and only a week ago, so it's still kind of fresh. But I was in the car yesterday and I had bought a baby gift for somebody else, and they thought that we were getting another baby. And they were all excited. Oh, are we getting another? And it's only been a week. So they're on board, They recognize their role as big sisters and big brother, and they take it seriously and they love it. And so.
Well, it also helps prepare them in a way.
Yeah. Oh, I've watched their growth in compassion and patience and selflessness for sure. They share their parents. They share their home. They share our time, and it's a sacrifice, but I do think it's building their character for sure.
So is this kind of a normal experience, would you say, Alicia?
Malia's experience?
Yeah.
Well, I think that Malia is very gifted in being able to communicate her experience, and I love to hear her share with people because she describes it so well. I think that, of course, everybody is different, but so often I hear from our current foster parents or previous foster parents just about the reward that maybe they weren't quite expecting, and they couldn't have ever expected just what their experience would have been like. But the most common concern I hear from people who maybe have thought about fostering before, but are worried about how difficult it would be. Malia always has such an amazing way of communicating how her family handles that and why it's still worth it to them. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit about, because most people say, I could never foster because I just couldn't handle letting the kids go. And as Malia just shared, they've been through that and been through it again very recently.
Yeah. And it was a long placement. It was 2 years.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Some they're all different cases, but some of them, when parental involvement is not there for a long time, they feel like they're your kids, you know.
Yes, I would imagine so.
And so, yeah, we just said goodbye to our 2-year-old, and yeah, I mean, I miss her every day, and I miss the noise, you know. I mean, it's very quiet at home right now, but it was absolutely worth it. You know, it's worth this pain that I'm feeling and this loss and heartache just to know that we gave her the opportunity to attach. You know, my youngest is adopted, and she came home at 15 months from Haiti, and somebody loved her. Somebody poured into her, and she had the ability to attach because of that. And I really see us now on the other side of adoption. We are giving that gift to another family, because when our daughter came home, I mean, it was immediate attachment. And I didn't understand all that I do now about what must have happened in her first 15 months to make it be that way. And so for us to be able to be a part of that miracle is, I mean, it's just a huge blessing.
Yeah, I know that I've worked in data processing most of my adult life, but for 1 year I subbed out at Sublimity Elementary, not the full school year, but it was a special needs class. And it was so rewarding. I mean, just you can make small little differences to these kids, which are huge to them.
Mm-hmm.
But and it was hard at the end of the year to say goodbye, you know, because I wasn't coming back. I had gotten a full-time job. And so, you know, it was difficult. But I mean, that is part of, you know, as a group, as a society, you want to make sure that children have a place. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not their fault. And they do need attention and care so that they feel secure, that they have that ability to, like you were saying, kind of bond with others. You don't want them being separated away from the rest of the group, because that's usually where you start really running into problems, if they don't feel part of the society or the family or whatever it takes.
As human beings, we're wired for connection and belonging, and as Malia spoke about attachment, it's so important in the early years. And our community and a lot of the collaborative efforts, cross agencies, even our legislature, has defined that as a really important cause, those early years, Head Start, early childhood education. And we're talking about the same thing, that if we invest in children when they are young, we know that it not only saves our society money down the road,
right,
but also just creates more healthy, well-balanced human beings. So, you know, foster parents sometimes are really able to create the kind of relationship with a child that lasts with them forever, that they always remember that there was one person who at the most difficult time in their lives was really truly there for them and really cared. And for the young ones that don't have that that development of memory yet, it's there whether they can recall it or not. It's you know, research supports that the brain is wired, and new neural pathways happen when there's a nurturing, responsive caregiver meeting that child's needs. So I like to tell parents or foster parents that, you know, whether they know it or not, they absolutely are making a difference. And that, I mean, that child's going to have that brain forever, right? So to be able to lay some of the really healthy groundwork and connections that happen early on in life, what an amazing gift that a foster parent can provide.
Yeah, and you know, I sometimes hear those ads about you don't have to be perfect to be a foster parent.
Yeah.
Because like even as parents, you know you make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And like my parents always used to refer to me as their initial mistake, you know, because they tried things out with me and then they got better as they went along. But the thing is that I think that's one of the problems sometimes it's an awful lot of responsibility and they're afraid they're not going to be able to do it correctly.
You're so right.
And, you know, you can give them training, but, you know, we didn't get training as parents. Mm-hmm. We weren't given an instruction book or, you know, classes or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But we managed. And that's the thing, too, I think that a lot of people don't understand, that the effort that you put into it is what's really important.
Right.
It's not how perfectly you do it.
Right.
It's caring about these children that makes the difference.
And I actually had a conversation with someone that I've known now for, I don't know, maybe a year or so, through some partnerships that we've had, because we at DHS know that we can't serve children and families all on our own. We reach out to our community, and so I've built a lot of relationships with different churches or different groups in the community that have a heart for children. And this one particular person who I had formed this partnership with their church actually, was sitting down and talking with me last week about how they really feel like they would like to move forward with becoming foster parents. And I didn't have that expectation at all. I was just working with them to figure out ways that we could collaborate and work together. And they recalled that when I came and spoke at their church that I had played a little clip, you know, those ads about you don't have to be perfect to be the perfect parent. And that actually stood out in his mind. He said, you know, I guess I just had this idea that, you know, maybe we aren't quite good enough parents because, you know, we don't have all the answers and we don't do it perfectly all the time. But then it really just struck him that you don't have to be perfect, and we aren't looking for perfect people. We're looking for people who have an understanding of safety, have an understanding of the kind of nurturing and responsiveness that our children need, and really are team players and want to work with our agency to better understand how to serve our kids.
And become better parents,
Right.
foster parents.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because both of my kids are very different. And that was a good learning experience for me, because I thought the second one would be at least somewhat similar to the first one, but I found out very quickly that wasn't the case at
Right.
all. And if you're a foster parent, you're going to have lots of different experiences there. So those are some of those fears that people have about being foster parents, about not doing it. Are there others that seem to block people from maybe becoming foster parents?
I'll let Malia chime in here too, but my first thought is that I think people have a misunderstanding that if you sign up to be a foster parent, it becomes like your lifelong career or something, and that you'll always be a foster parent for years and years. But really, even if someone just committed to one child or committed to doing it for 1 or 2 years, that is so helpful. I'm thinking of the story of the man who saw a little boy along the coast throwing starfish back into the ocean, and he approached the little boy and he said, why are you you can't possibly save all of these starfish by throwing them back into the ocean. And he said, well, it made a difference for that one. And that's such a great example of what I try to convey to people who are thinking about it, is that, you know, even if you're making a difference for just one, you're making a difference for that one life. And, you know, who knows what kind of an impact that can have on the rest of the world too.
And maybe it'll come around later.
Right.
So, do you have something to add to that, Malia?
Well, really, we kind of discussed what I really hear the most is I could never love a child and let them go. Like, that's number one comment that I get from people. And I don't know, sometimes it kind of offends me. Does that imply that I do not have feeling? Or, I'm not sure. I think it's a compliment, but just maybe not said quite the right way. But sure, it's hard. Sure, it's, I will miss these kids for the rest of my life. Their pictures are on our wall. They're in my heart. But it was the right thing to do, and we can do it. We can choose not to do it, but we all have the ability to love and to give love, and so.
Yeah, I also remember I used to live in a condominium association, and I would be, since I worked off shift, I'd sometimes be the only adult home during the day, and during the summer the kids would come over and knock on my door because they wanted to go to the pool and they had to have an adult. And I didn't have any kids at the time. Oh. But the thing is that I saw that as a responsibility, that, they're not your kids, but They're everyone's kids, really. And so whatever you can do, I mean, what? I go out and sit in the pool with them for a few hours and, you know, they're happy. And actually I got out and got some sun. It's not such a bad thing. And I mean, having kids around is kind of lively. I sometimes I'm kind of waiting to become a grandparent. I'm not there yet, but but you know, you can do just like you were saying, just if you make a difference for one kid, maybe it's only for a few hours or a couple of days or something. It can make a big difference, especially to a young child.
And I love what you said too about how they're our kids. This is our community. They are our future, and they're our kids. And it can't just be up to a government agency. We need people to volunteer to become foster parents. We need church families and support groups, and people who are just there to give in their own way, and whatever way they have, what strengths they have to give. And I think that's where I'm really hoping to see some response from our community, is just kind of a sense of ownership and a sense of concern, maybe, that it takes all of us. It takes a village, and
well, I think back about tribal societies, where the kids would have actually lots of adults around them that were teaching them various things, hunting, fishing, making meals, picking berries, whatever. But sometimes it wasn't just your parents that were helping you learn particular skills and like that. It was, and not even sometimes your family, your immediate family. It was other people in the village that took, the kids in and would help them learn this kind of skill or that kind of skill, and just pass it on. And that's one of the things I think that we sometimes miss when we become these little segregated, family units. And I sometimes, when I lived in the suburbs, I would see the garage door go up, car would go in, that'd be the last you see of them. And we need to kind of break away from that and realize that it's much bigger than that.
It is, and it's, I think it's something that's maybe out of people's view in their daily lives. They don't realize that there are 600 kids in Marion County in foster care right now. And it's kind of that same mentality as, when you come upon an accident and you see that there's other people around too, so you're like, oh, I'm sure that they've got it taken care of, and you go on. But really, sure, there are some people taking care of it, but to have that assumption is really costly. Especially
when it comes to foster kids. They really need some right now, and they can contact you. We're going to be running during the credits, we'll run contact information, so if people are interested, they can contact you. And they can always call Department of Health Services to get more information.
Sure. If they live in Marion County, I would be their contact. And then, of course, if they can come to the event next week, then they get to hear from more than just me. They get to hear from foster parents, too. Okay.
Well, I want to thank you, Malia and Alicia, for coming on today and talking about this very important issue at this critical time.
Thank you.
And this has been Valley View, and come back next week.
I'm sorry, because I have my...